Okay. Um, Good morning. So this is our mali ata. Wait lang. Lesson 2, historical development of fingerprints of identification. Okay. We will discuss the historical development of fingerprint system of identification. So lesson 2 to supplemental discussion. Historically, the development of fingerprint science predates that Christian era by many centuries. The prehistoric Indian picture writing of hand with crude mark ridge patterns, fingerprint impressions on clay tablets. So, ang gamit nila noon, ancient times, is clay tablet. Alam niyo yung clay, uh, isa siyang uri ng mud o in Ilocano, pitak, putik sa Tagalog. Very sticky na pwedeng mag-adapt, I mean, yes, pwede niyang i-adapt yung shape ng anumang bagay na mai-preface sa kanya, yung impression. So, kung papansinin nyo dito sa may picture, this is a clay tablet. Ito yung plain impression ng fingerprint ng isang tao. Important events on fingerprint. Okay. Sorry. Kuhan lang natin. Ayos lang natin. Okay. So, ayan. Sa Nova Scotia, okay, sa isang lake, prehistoric picture writing of hand with ridge patterns was discovered. So, dun sa sa Nova Scotia, meron silang nahanap na drawing or illustration ng isang kamay na may ridge pattern. Okay. Kung makapansin yung may ridge pattern siya. So, ibig sabihin, they are aware of the ridge or fingerprint. In 1873, petrol leaf carving at Kijimkujik Lake at Nova Scotia shows awareness of pattern. So, nalimutan ko kung saan banda tong Nova Scotia. Hindi ako nagkakamali. Nasa Canada. Okay. Deed of hand mark China. Naman sa China, creates location at joins on right hand mark. So, wag na tayong focus dyan. So, next slide. Doon naman tayo sa Persia. Sa Persia, in 14th century, various official government had fingerprint impressions. And one government officials, a doctor, observed that no two fingerprints were exactly alike. Okay, noong 14th century pa yan. And after the death of Christ, or Anno Domini, 1400s sa Persia. The 14th century Persian book. Ito yung basis kanina sa una. Ito naman yung kinuha ko story niya. The 14th century Persian book, Jamehol Tawarik University History, attributed to Khaja Rashiduddin Fazlollah Hamadani in 1247-1380, includes some comments about the practice of identifying persons from their fingerprints. So it was, I lifted this from on.co. And then naman tayo sa ancient Babylon. Ito yung itsura sa ancient Babylon using clay tablets. So, parang parehas lang dun sa first picture. Pero actually, the same lang talaga siya. In ancient China, thumbprints were found on clay seals. Some of these seals can be seen in Smithsonian Institution, Washington, D.C. during the Tang Dynasty in 618 to 907. So, ancient China, gumagamit sila ng clay seals. Mapansin niyo, puro clay ang nagagamit ko. O sa China naman, meron tayong isang Chinese ruler na si Emperor Shi. Before Christ 246 to 210. He devised a seal carved from a white jade. Ang ginamit nila is white jade. Fingerprints during this time were used in a business transaction as a sign of acknowledgement of forces. So, papansin niyo, doon sa mga Korean movies, sa mga Chinese movies, yung paglagda nila ng mga kontrata, lalo na example doon sa movies nila, Bruce Lee. Di ba kung napapanood niyo yun? Meron silang ginagamit na red na ink. Or ewan ko kung anong tawag nila doon. Yun yung dadampian nila ng mga daliri nila sa kanila. Lalagay sa papel. To the Chinese, fingerprints are known as wachi. Ang tawag nila sa China is wachi, fingerprint. Slices of matches of fingerprints are kept to preserve the identity of people. Slices of matches of fingerprints are kept to preserve the identity of people. So, hindi sila nag-slice. So, ang ibig sabihin niyan, may mga specimen sila ng fingerprints ng mga tao. The arches are known as law or snail. Yung, meron tayong picture mamaya. Ito yung types ng fingerprint pattern, ridge pattern. We have the arch, and we have the loops and the word. Pero dito, ang loops naman is sa China, key ang tawag nila or seed basket. The loops are called upon as a presage of good luck. So, arches loop, low key. Yan tawag nila. Dito tayo. So, ito yung tinatawag nating arches, loops, reverse. Kung papansinin niyo yung kamay nyo, pag nagpara siyang slope or hill na gano'n, ang tawag natin dyan is plain arch. Ito. Yung ganun lang, plain arch. Pero yung tented arch naman, medyo nagpataas siya. Okay? Nagpataas siya na parang tent. Ganon. Ang pinagkaiba naman sa loop is you just enter on one side and exit on the same side. Okay? Dun siya sa one side, pero ang exit niya pa rin is same side. Okay? Dito, you just enter on one side and exit on the other side naman ang arches. Tignan mo. Pumasok siya dyan, lalabas niya doon. Ito naman, pumasok dyan, lalabas siya doon. Ito naman sa loop. Galing siya dito sa baba, from the right side, labas siya doon sa the same side na pumasukan niya. Okay? Doon. Kaya nga loop, di ba? Dito naman, galing siya sa left side, lumabas rin siya sa left side. Kung papansinin nyo, ito yung tinatawag sa gitna. Ito yung core ng ridge pattern nyo. That's the core. Ito naman, this is the delta. Itong area na to, ito yung reference ng delta at ng core. Diyan sila magbibilang ng ridge pattern. Ito yung delta naman. So, ito, pag nandito yung delta, ang tawag dito is radial loop. At dito naman sa left, tawag naman natin dito is, pag dito naman, ang galing, radial loop yan. Pag dito naman, ulnar loop. Okay? Ibig sabihin, ito, galing to sa right hand o right finger. Ito, left na finger ang gamit dito. Ito naman plain wall. Pag plain wall naman, consists of circles more than one loop or a mixture of pattern types. Ito, plain wall, umiikot siya. Pag wall, umiikot. Pag central pocket loop naman, ay central pocket wall. Ganito, itsura niya. Combination siya ng dalawang delta ng word. Ito naman, itsura ng central pocket loop na sa gitna siya. Di ba? I-distinguish natin. Pag double loop word naman, dalawa ang delta niya. dalawa siyang loop na gumanon. Tapos parang yun yung double loop whorl. Pag accidental whorl naman, pwedeng composed of double loop whorl at central pocket loop. Okay, whorl. Okay, tapos accidental whorl, mixture siya. Plain whorl, ganito lang siya. Di ba? Pagka-aralan natin isa-isa yan. Later, sa mga later na lessons. Early publications concerning fingerprints. So, according to Marcello Malfigi in 1686, he is also known as the grandfather of dactyloscopy. He is an Italian anatomist, University of Bologna. Etong Zingquan, etong anatomist, siya yung nag-study ng human body parts. Itong si Marcello Malfigi, siya ang author ng treatise ng Rich Spiral Loops in Fingerprints. Meron din tayong tinatawag na Malfigi layer. Ito yung skin natin. Yung Malfigi layer is 1.8 millimeter thick. He also published his work, The External Tactus Organo, depicting the construction of the layers of the human skin. So, he described the ridges found on the palmar surface of the hand, which course in the first and sign, and the pores which serve as the mouth of the sweat gland. So, he was noted for the discovery of the inner and outer structure of the skin, dermis and epidermis. Pag dermis, siya yung inner layer ng skin. Pag epidermis naman, outer layer of the skin. So, ito yung natawag nating Malfigi layer. Meron naman tayong isa pa na siyensista noon. We have John Evangelist Perkin-J. He is also known as a father of dactyloscopy. Yung isa naman kanina, grandfather of dactyloscopy. Ito naman, father of dactyloscopy. John Evangelist Perkin-J. In 1823, a professor of physiology at the University of Breslau, Germany, published his thesis discussed the 9 patterns of fingerprint. Ito naman yung 9 patterns. We have the traverse curve, we have the central longitudinal stria or tented arch. Ito, yung plain arch, ito, yung transverse curve. Ito yung plain arch. Tented arch naman or central longitudinal stria. Ito, tented arch. Public stripe or ulnar or radial loop. Ito yun. Ulnar. Ito naman, radial. Pag galing dito sa left, yung delta ulnar. Pag right, then radial loop. Okay? And number 5, we have almond whorl or ito yung whorl na tinatawag. At we have the spiral whorl. Ito, spiral whorl. Elliptical whorl. Ito. We have the circular whorl. Ito. We have double whorl or pin loop. Ito. Ito yung 9 patterns na ginawa ni father of dactyloscopy, John Evangelist Perkin-J. Yung libro naman niya, Commentary on the Physiological Examination of Organs, Vision, and the Cutaneous System. Pag sinabing cutaneous, sense of touch or skin, okay? Describing the ridges, giving their names, and establishing certain rules of classification, 9 groups, and discovered in his study of physiology that the skin on the inner surface of the hands bore patterns. Na daw itong ating inner surface of the hands bore patterns. Kaya kahit pa masugat itong fingers natin, kahit pa babalik at babalik pa rin kasi may pattern na sa loob niyan na siya rin yung lumalabas. Okay. And also we have William Herschel. Siya naman yung father of chiroscopy. Itong si William Herschel, siya ay siya ay isang the English, okay, siya ay isang Inglaterra. English first began using fingerprint in July 1858. Chief Magistrate siya ng Hooghly District in Jungipur, India. First used fingerprints on native contract. So, ginamit na sa mga kontrata ng mga natives doon ang fingerprint. Herschel had Rajyar Radyadhar Konai, a local businessman. He impressed his handprint on contract. Okay? Ginamit niya ang handprint sa contract. Ito naman, si Konai, he is frightened. He is frightened out. Baka kasi yung signature niya, ma-repudiate, ibig sabihin, parang walang value. Okay? The idea was mere to frighten him out of all thought of repudiating his signature. The native was suitably impressed and Herschel made a habit of requiring palm prints. Palm. Pag sinabing palm prints, buo. Hindi lang tong fingerprints. Lahat. Palm print. Okay, and Herschel made a habit of requiring palm prints and later prints of the right index fingers. Okay, on every contact made with the locals. Personal contact with documents, they believe made the contract more binding than the simply signing it. Right? Thus, the first wide-scale modern-day use of fingerprints was started not upon use of scientific evidence, but on the superstitious belief. So, etong si Juan Herschel, ginamit niya na ang fingerprints noon, palm prints, at sa dumaan ng panahon, pati ang index fingerprint. Ito, index. Okay. By conducting his experiments with colleagues and friends, taking their fingerprints over a period, and with careful notation, Herschel established the principle of persistence and immutability. While his experience with fingerprints was admittedly limited, Herschel's private conviction that all fingerprints were unique to the individual as well as permanent throughout the individual's life inspired him to expand their use. So, itong tinatawag ni Herschel na ang fingerprint pala natin ay unique. Walang dalawang individual ang merong parehong fingerprint. Throughout our life, yan pa rin ang fingerprint natin, hindi magbabago. Using his various posts as a magistrate, including the control of prisons, he introduced the use of fingerprints to prevent impersonation. So, siya pala ang gumamit ng fingerprint to prevent impersonation sa mga prisons. Okay? Kaya ka nagkakaroon ng fingerprint identification sa prisons. Kasi, ganito yan. Bago ma-confine ng isang tao sa isang kulong, kukuhanan mo na siya ng fingerprint. Okay? Bago sila pumasok. Kasi nga, baka mamaya, yung palang kinulong natin is ibang tao. Kamukha niya, talagang kamukha niya. Pero yung pala, nagkuhan pala. Kaiba kasi yung fingerprint nila hindi nag-match na doon sa record. So, very important ang fingerprint. Meron naman tayo isa pa na scientista, Henry Folds. Okay? Henry Folds, Scottish physician, wrote that the skin-rich patterns could be important in identification work. Okay? A thief left his fingerprint on whitewashed wall. Okay? Meron daw isang one. He compared with first suspect, walang match. Compared with the second suspect with a positive association. He recommended the use of a thin film of printer ink as a transfer medium and is generally used today. Yun naman yung tinatawag naman natin na finger lifting. Noon, film ang gamit nila. Pero ngayon, lifting tape na tayo. Pero meron talagang ginagamit na fingerprint lifting film. Yung hindi siya masyadong madikit. Pero pag madikit siya sa mga flattened prints. Pero hindi siya yung parang tape na halos lahat didikitan niya. During the 1970s, Dr. Henry Folds from Bate, North Ayrshire was the surgeon superintendent of Tsukiji Hospital in Tokyo, Japan, and took up the study of skin furrows. Okay? Etong skin furrows, after noticing fingerprint marks on specimen of prehistoric material. Etong skin furrows, ito yung canal-like portion sa ridge pattern natin. Yung ridge, siya yung, anong tawag dito? Siya yung raised portion. Ang furrows naman, siya yung uh, canal-like, yung parang, anong tawag ba? Ano ba yung trend na laro natin ngayon? Siya yung, kumbaga, pinaka-group. Di ba, pag napag-aralan natin sa forensic ballistics, sa yung rifling ng baril, yung barrel is composed of lance and groove. Yung lance, yun yung raised portion. Yung grooves naman siya yung depressed portion. Yun nasa baba, pinakakanal. Parang ganun din sa ridge pattern. Yung furrows, yun ang pinaka-grooves ng skin. Yun namang, ay, ng ridge ng ridge area. Yun namang lance, yun namang ridge, yun ang pinaka-land ng ridge area. Kaya nga tayo tinatawag na ridge and furrows. Okay? A learned and industrious man, Dr. Falls not only recognized the importance of fingerprints as a means of identification, but devised a method of classification as well. So, meron din siyang tinatawag na classification system, Falls and Folds system. In 1880, he advocated the use of fingerprints in the detection of crimes. Okay? His article on the skin furrows of the hand points out his observation. The charged prints left at the scene of the crime scene would provide for identification of the offenders. Ang ibig sabihin ng chance prints, yun yung mga plain impressions ng mga tao sa crime scene. Yung mga naiwan na crime scene ay na fingerprint. Yun ay pwedeng gamitin sa criminal detection. How? Mag-a-apply sila ng fingerprint powder and they will lift them. Yun yung ibig sabihin niya, yung post niya. He also credited with the first fingerprint identification of a greasy fingerprint left on alcohol bottle. Okay? First fingerprint identification of a greasy fingerprint left on an alcohol bottle. Ito naman, tinatawag natin si Gilbert Thompson. In 1882, Thompson of the U.S. Geological Survey in New Mexico used his thumbprint on document to prevent forgery. This is the first known use of fingerprint in the USA. So, si George Thompson, ito yung thumbprint niya. Siguro, ito yung right thumb niya or left thumb. Pero sa pagkakaalam ko, based ako nito, he used his left thumb. Or, pwede rin na yung right thumb. Pero papansin niyo ang thumb na ginamit dito is whorl. Ay plain arch. This is a plain arch. Pero hindi natin sigurado kung galing ba ito sa kanyang kaliwang kamay o kanang kamay. Walang I'm James Shatter with Blank to Lying Bob. Pay to Lying Bob $75. Gilbert Thompson. August 8, 1882. Hindi natin sigurado yung mabasa siya. Pero siya yung gumawa ng fingerprint para ma-prevent ang forgery. Meron tao isa pa, si Otto Kollmann. In the late 1880s, Kollmann of Hamburg, Germany was the first researchers to assess the information of friction ridges on the fetus and the random physical stress tension. So, si Otto Kollmann naman, ang contribution niya is sa fetus naman, na meron na palang ridge pattern ng fetus. Okay. Ito, sa pang-scientist, anthropologist. Siya si Sir Francis Galton. In 1880s, a British anthropologist and a cousin of Charles Darwin. Began his observation of fingerprint as means of identification in 1892. He published his fingerprints book. Ito, siya nag-propose ng pattern types. Siya yung propose ng 3 pattern types. We have the loop, whorls, and arches. Ito yung itsura ng arches. Ito yung loop. May loop siya. And whorl. Paikot. Fingerprints do not change over the course of an individual's lifetime and that no 2 fingerprints are the same. Siya yung nanggaling naman yun. We have J.C.A. Mayer. The first is to state that that prints of two different persons are never like. So, principle of individuality, JCA Mayer. Okay, he is a German doctor and anatomist who published book that was an atlas of an anatomical illustration of the fingerprint. His remarks contain a statement that was one of the fundamental principles of fingerprint science. His book included detailed drawing of patterns and pictures. He wrote, although the arrangement of the skin wedge is never duplicated in two people, nevertheless the similarities are close among the some individuals. In others, the differences are marked yet despite their peculiarities of arrangement. All have certain likeness, principle of individuality. So, siya yung gumawa ng principle of individuality, JCA Mayer, that no two persons have the same fingerprints. And you have William Waker, took the prints of his palm in 1897. 41 years later, he printed the same palm to prove that the prints do not change. Principle of permanency yan. James Herman Waker. Ito naman si Juan Busitek. Busitek. An Argentine police official began the first fingerprint files based on Galton patterns. In 1892, he made the first criminal fingerprint identification. Okay. First criminal fingerprint identification. He identified a woman by the name of Francisca Rojas, who murdered her two sons and cut her own throat in an attempt to place blame on others. Pero well, gumamit siya ng fingerprint para malaman na itong si Francisca Rojas babae. Kaya he murdered her two sons. And attempt siya na cut her throat na para i-blame ang ibang tao. Her bloody prints was left on the doorpost proving her identity as the murderer. Ito, yung bloody fingerprints niya na iwan sa doorpost. Ito naman, ito na yung ginagamit natin ngayon sa Soho at sa iba pa. Yun, tinatawag natin yung Henry system of fingerprint or Henry classification. Sir Edward Richard Henry is an Englishman who in 1897 proposed another classification system that is still in use today. The most English-speaking countries use some versions of Henry classification system. Ito, the father of modern fingerprint science, siya si Edward Richard Henry, father of modern fingerprint science. At least the first man who successfully applies fingerprints for identification. So ito yun. Ito sa chart, ito yung tinatawag natin index finger, ay thumb, right thumb, index, middle finger, ring finger, and little. Left thumb, left index, middle. Ayan, parehas na yan. At yung apat nating fingerprints. Except the thumb. Ito yung pinky, ring, middle, and index. Ito yung ginagamit natin. Ito, may binibilang-bilang siya. Okay? Pag ganito, left siya, ibig sabihin ulnar loop. Ulnar loop. Ay, yes. Ito naman, nasa left siya, ibig sabihin radial loop. AW world ang tawag yan. Okay, si Gilbert Thompson, parehas rin. Nehemiah Group. Si Nehemiah Group, he published a report before the Royal Society of London, England, describing the ridges and the pores of the hands and feet. So, siya yung unang nag-publish, okay? Siya yung nag-aral ng pores ng ating phrase. At siya rin yung nag-describe ng ridge pattern. Nehemiah Group. Si Govard Bidlow, published a thesis Anatomia Humanis Corporis. Ito yung anatomy. So, dinisect niya yung mga kamay, yung mga bones ng kamay. Ito yung radial, ulna bone, gano'n. Yung pinag-aralan niya. Diba, pag-aralan natin yan sa next lessons. Ito, he emphasizes the appearance and arrangement of the ridges of the thumb due to their importance. So, and we have Mary Kay Holland. He was the first American instructor in dactyloscopy. And Dr. Edmund Lockhart, father of poroscopy. Okay. When two objects come into contact, there is an exchange of material from each other to the other. Ito yung sinabi naman niya ni Edmund Lockhart principle. Okay. Lockhart studied and investigated identification using the position and variation of force using ridge characteristics. So, itong Lockhart principle na yung sa crime scene, kung may nahawakan ka, may maiiwan kang ebidensya. Yun yung principle niya. So, that's the end of scholar's life. Tapos, dito naman tayo sa requirements nyo. Okay, dito naman tayo sa requirements nyo. Yung first requirement nyo is essay. Answer the questions briefly. Identify two persons who made it in the history of fingerprints. What were their contributions? What is the relevance of their findings to the importance of fingerprint as a method? So, sa mga sinabi natin kanina ng mga tao, i-identify nyo dalawa tao who made it in the history of fingerprints. What are their contributions? So, ano yung relevance niya sa fingerprint at yung method of identification niya. For example, si Henry classification, sino yun? Sino pa yung isang classification system? Sino yun? And second, discuss the principle of permanency. Discuss the principle of permanency. Yung si permanency, Herman Walker. Okay, who am I? Yan, identification. Sino yung father of the philosophy? Alam mo na yan. Common sense na yun. Usahin nyo yung notion. So, kung may question kayo, just message sa messenger. Thank you.